Hey, George Haas here. I wanted to start a new thread of thought around practice, talking really in a way of how you organize your practice. So I sometimes like to use the term Dharma map as a way of describing that. There are a lot of different maps out there. The one that I am most drawn to is the 16 Stages of Insight, and I particularly like the commentary that Mahasi Sayadaw wrote, The Progress of Insight. Mostly the reason I like it is because it's the way that my practice really unfolded, and I didn't, before I knew about it, as I went through the process of practicing, that's basically how it unfolded for me. So it has a natural affinity. And I think that one of the reasons there are so many different Dharma maps out there is because people's conditioning are different. And so they need to find the practice that resonates for them. So I've always preferred Theravada-oriented Karnika Samadhi practice, momentary concentration, insight practice, but Zen is there, Tibetan is there, different forms of Vipassana are there. As you begin your exploration in meditation, looking for the things that resonate for you so that the practice is fun and interesting, because that carries you into the practice. Lately, my practice has been organized around a metta vipassana approach, so using metta jhana as a way of concentrating the mind, developing concentration, and also creating a kind context for the vipassana or insight exploration. It makes it easier to move into the sometimes difficult insight process that comes from vipassana, and also provides a refuge that if the vipassana practice heats up too much, you have a place that you can withdraw into, a kind place, and reorganize or regain balance, and then once you're rebalanced in that kind mind frame, return to the vipassana practice. The organization of practice is sometimes around the goals that you have. Often when people come to practice, they come because they're suffering in some way. And in the West, in particular, people come to practice having tried other modalities to address the suffering and not found relief there. So they come into the practice from a place of stress or difficulty, looking for a way to resolve that difficulty. And Vipassana meditation is really excellent with stress. You come into observing the present moment. Often the thought processes that generate stress are then relaxed or shut down. Equanimity arises, and you're able to just be in the experience of the present moment. But I think for most people, simply resolving stress with the practice of meditation will not actually provide much in the way of fulfillment, particularly spiritual fulfillment. And maybe what you see out on the horizon is happiness, just ordinary happiness. I think that there's a bell curve of people that come to practice in the West. On one end of the bell curve, say the entrance into it, are people that don't function very well. They've had difficult conditioning, and they come to the practice of meditation as a way of attempting to resolve that so that they can get into our cultural activities of adult life. And I think at the other end of the bell curve are people that have done very well in our cultural pursuits of what success means, and that they still find that they're unfulfilled in a deep way. And everybody else who's in the middle doesn't come to practice because they're too engaged in pursuing the conventional vehicles of success and fulfillment. So, you come in for stress, or you come in because the activities that you've engaged in your life are unfulfilling. You resolve the stress, and there on the horizon is happiness, and you pursue the goal of happiness in meditation. And meditation works really well for that, and you find that happiness, relatively independent of conditions, arises. You see happiness come and go. You see sorrow come and go. And that ultimately is not the fulfillment, the spiritual fulfillment that you may have been pursuing all along. And so out in the distance on the horizon then is freedom, and that becomes the direction that you go in. I think that if you find spiritual freedom, and I would say enlightenment is a term for that, or liberation, and maybe I would define that as being able to drop into cessation or nirvana whenever you want to, and then fully manifest a brilliant sense of self, and then you let that go and drop back into cessation. But that level of freedom is ultimately satisfying. So there's a lot of approaches to addressing stress in meditation, organizing around concentration, or using some kind of visualization, or say a heart practice, metta, or compassion. And that opens the path to happiness, conventional, ordinary happiness. But then how do you go from there toward classical enlightenment or liberation in this lifetime? And then we're into the area of Dharma maps, and the progression of insights that have a tendency to lead toward liberation in that sense. So in the conversations that we're going to have here, I'd like to go through the progress of insight and the 16 stages. In some sense, the 16 stages are a series of insights that you work toward gaining in your practice, and as you go through them, it's a kind of cycle. They end in classical enlightenment if you have fruition at the end of the cycle. But if not, you tend to drop out and begin the cycle again. The 16 stages of insight are, in some sense, a description of the way to eradicate the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters are the four-path model of liberation is a way of addressing the eradication of the 10 fetters. The first path is stream entry, and that's the eradication of the first 3 fetters. And then you have a once returner, a second path, and that's the weakening of the 4th and 5th fetter. You have the non-returner, third path, which is the eradication of the 4th and 5th fetter, and then arhatship, which is the eradication of the remaining 5 fetters. So stream entry, eradication of a belief in a solid sense of self, eradication of the belief in religious ceremony as the same thing as liberation, and an eradication of the hindrance of doubt. If you've had the liberating experience, then the doubt that the path would lead you to liberation is eliminated. The second path is a once returner. So we're talking about reincarnation here. Stream enters are thought to reincarnate 7 more lifetimes if you die at that level. Once returner means that if you die at that level of liberation, you're reincarnated 1 more time. In the second path, you work at weakening the hindrances of craving and aversion. And you take a third path, you eliminate craving and aversion, or the fetters of craving and aversion, and you're thought to be non-return. That is to say, off the cycle of birth and death, so freed from suffering through reincarnation. And the fourth fetter, arhatship, is the eradication of the remaining 5 fetters, so restlessness and agitation, sloth and torpor, craving for existence, craving for non-existence, and the last to go is conceit. So in the coming weeks we'll talk about different aspects of this map, and then we'll end with a discussion around developing Mettagroup. Thanks.